Hey everyone, and welcome back to Open. So May is Asian American and Pacific Islander Heritage Month. And as we recognize the contributions and influence of Asian and Pacific Island Americans, our last guest is a Queens native playwright, performer, acoustic punk rock raconteur, and educator. I just love that word. And his plays and performances have been seen off Broadway throughout the US, in Paris, Hong Kong, Guangzhou, China, and his lyrics, his plays, lyrics, and memoirs highlight the New York City Asian American experience on stage. In his new memoir, Our Laundry, Our Town, My Chinese American Life from Flushing to the Downtown Stage and Beyond, details his upbringing in Flushing, Queens, in the 70s, being first generation to Chinese immigrant parents, helping run his family's laundry, living in two worlds of traditional Chinese culture and the underworld of what? Punk rock, of course. Here now to share more is playwright, performer, and acoustic punk rock raconteur and educator Alvin Eng. Hello and welcome.
Hello, Rhina. Thank you so much for having me. It's an honor to be here. Thank you.
Oh, thank you for being here with us. And I'm giggling because, you know, I just love the term acoustic punk rock raconteur.
Yes, yes. We're always trying to put together disparate elements that really have no, seemingly on the surface, have no business being together, but they really do belong.
Yeah, I get it. And not only that, as an educator, it's kind of like, well, you know, go look it up and then figure it out, you know? But thank you for being here with us, and congratulations on your new book. And let's just open up with this new memoir that you're talking about, just being of the 70s and living two worlds. I mean, I want to say that I as New Yorkers, isn't that the same story for all of us, even if we are from a different culture?
No, absolutely. Like so many of us, like of course, because New York is the most diverse place in the world. We all live like different lives in some ways, and so growing up when I did too, it really was like in the 70s, the city was crazy. It was a wild place, and yet I would go home. But you know, my parents had an arranged marriage. So it's like going home to a household that was like rooted in not just a different culture, but almost like a different century. So it was very bizarre that way. But it also put things in place too. I started to feel my punk rock goals. I painted my fingernails black and everything. But and the first time I came home.
No, I'm just visualizing, right? And just by what you just said, with regards to your parents being in an arranged marriage and remaining married and raising you, and now you're, I guess, what they would consider rebelling, right? Painting your nails black.
Yes, yes, but they kept it in perspective though. My mother also had a wicked sense of humor. She looked at my nails the first time and just said, "Ha ha ha, Batman." She put me right in my place. So sometimes it was very grounding to have that too. And no, and it was like so many of the immigrant families, Chinese. I guess that cliche was true. Also had either a Chinese hand laundry or a restaurant, and our family had the laundry out in Flushing.
Right. So just share with us what you learned from being of service in that capacity.
No, it really was very, very different. You saw the world from a very different perspective, and you know, the laundry at that time, it was still the end of I guess the Cold War effects in some ways, where China was a public enemy number two, and I guess public enemy number one still is Russia right now. But so that was then, and now some things don't change. I always say in life, a lot of times the questions remain the same, but hopefully the answers are always different. We always hope for that. So just it was so growing up in that way too. It was a very different world. We didn't have as much acceptance because only one of my parents spoke English too. So only and so it really was a very different time. And from our perspective, you get when I was a kid, I thought, how come my parents just stay within their own circles? Like, why don't they socialize with other people? And then you get older and realize there was a precedent for that. They had to escape the Chinese Exclusion Act. That was the first, and God help us, may that be the last American law that made it illegal for one race of people to become citizens here. And that just stuck, even though my parents came right after that. They still had to circumnavigate it with false identification papers, but that set that set the mold, if you will, for a lot of Chinese American and even Asian American socialization. They really stayed started to stay under the radar.
You know, and then there's that you were living in Flushing, right? Which is it's a predominantly Asian neighborhood, and it still is to this day.
Right now, but I'm a little bit older, you know, like I said, I'm 25, no, I'm a little bit older, so you know, my coming of age in the late 20th century, in the 70s and 80s, it's been a lot about American assimilation and immigration. Like
right.
growing up, we were one of the few, believe it or not, we were one of the few Asian families in Flushing at that time. And I tried, like everyone, really worked very hard to assimilate. And by the time I got there, there was no there. Because when I got old enough, all of a sudden, it was bizarre. All of a sudden, Flushing was filled with Asian immigrants. So I was the only ABC, you know, American-born Chinese who, and I regret it now, but I rebelled. I refused to learn to speak Chinese, didn't learn to. So all of a sudden, everyone looked like, for the first time in my life, everyone looked like me, but I couldn't communicate with any of them because I didn't speak any Chinese.
Do you speak Chinese now?
Well, very little, very little. I regret that, but I rebelled then, and it was a different world then. Like, you know, you wanted to just fit in with what was around you. And in the 70s, you know, it was we just wanted to be one way, and so that really said a lot about how things were changing with us too. And it's amazing that Flushing became the second Chinatown while I was there. So it said a lot about how our world and culture changed.
And so, does your book take us on that trip?
Yes, it does. Very much starts off like in the laundry, where, you know, we had there was a lot, like people would open the door and yell at my parents, like, you know, Chinky Cho, go home and everything. So we had to deal with all that. So we would look at that, how that changed. But then we would always go to Chinatown. But then it was always that's why I guess all outsiders gravitate towards the arts. And in my time, it really, first time I felt I could fit in somewhere was with punk rock worlds. Like, you know, like being out of boroughs kids, like and I love that we'll always call Manhattan the city, no matter how old we get. People who grew up in the outer boroughs always call Manhattan the city. So, yes. So they were like people, of course, in my neighborhood that would never leave Flushing, maybe never have, but I knew why there was a 7 train in our town, and I was on that train all the time. And so it was like growing up in a small town in New York City in the 70s at the same time. And the book talks a lot about that.
You know, that's one of the beauties of living in New York, and it continues to be the beauty of living in New York, is that, you know, you can get on the train and you can travel anywhere, and then all of a sudden feel like you're in a different part of the world. So thank you for sharing a little excerpt of what it means to travel on the 7 train back in the 70s. I know we're out of time. I wish we could talk more, but you're going to give us a little taste of the book anyway. So I just want you guys to know, don't go anywhere, because when we return, Alvin Eng, he's going to perform for us after the break. So you don't want to miss.